Hello, everyone, and thanks for joining us on the program today. I'm Amarachi Ubani. Here's what's coming up within the hour. Once known as the City of Gold, Mandalay in Myanmar is now referred to as the City of Death following the 7.7 magnitude earthquake that struck on Friday. U.S. President Donald Trump prepares to announce trade tariffs against the United Kingdom. The country's prime minister calls for calm, while Russian president calls up 160,000 men, the country's highest number of conscripts since 2011. Let's begin the world today. Hey, thanks for staying with us. We're zeroing down on the city of Mandalay in Myanmar, once referred to as the City of Gold, dotted by glittering pagodas and Buddhist burial mounds. Mandalay is Myanmar's second largest city. Now, all of that is no more. The streets are littered with debris now, and those temples have crumbled. Even worse, the air is set to now reek of dead bodies, many under the rubble of the buildings. Authorities have put the death toll from Friday's 7.7 magnitude earthquake as past 2,700, with over 4,500 people injured and the number of the missing put at hundreds. Those figures, according to the country's military chief, are expected to rise. Residents say they've spent sleepless nights wandering the streets in despair as food and water supplies dwindle. Poor infrastructure and a patchwork of civil conflicts are severely hampering the relief efforts in Myanmar, where the military has a history of suppressing the scale of national disasters. The death toll is expected to keep rising as rescuers gain access to more collapsed buildings and cut-off districts. French politician and leader of the French far-right National Rally, Marine Le Pen, was found guilty of embezzling European funds to finance her party. In a television interview yesterday evening, she said she would appeal against the move, describing it as political and arguing that she was innocent. Le Pen also accused the court of attempting to block her from running for president in the 2027 election and said she would not let herself be eliminated like this. Le Pen was given a 5-year ban on running for office with immediate effect, meaning she's barred from running in the next presidential race unless her appeal is successful, and even before then. And she was also handed a €100,000 fine and a 4-year prison sentence, 2 years of which will be spent with electronic tag rather than in custody, while the other 2 are suspended. Members of the RN have pushed back against the verdict, with some describing it as against all principles of law and an infringement on democracy. And party president Jordan Bardella has called for popular peaceful mobilization in support of Le Pen. Well, all across in the United States, President Donald Trump, reacting to the ban and her sentence, says it's a big deal, as a lot of people thought she was not going to be convicted.
Marine Le Pen, the far-right leader, got convicted in court and is now banned from running for office for 5 years. Do you have a comment on that?
That's a big deal. That's a very big deal. I know all about it, and a lot of people thought she wasn't going to be convicted of anything, and I don't know if it means conviction, but she was banned for running for 5 years, and she's the leading candidate. That sounds like this country. That sounds very much like this country.
Meanwhile, Donald Trump is preparing to introduce some caveats to Wednesday's expected tariffs announcement against the UK and the rest of the world. Tariffs are expected to be far more generous than those countries were to the US, says Trump, meaning they will be kinder than other countries were to the United States of America over the decades. Trump has previously said that introducing those tariffs would boost manufacturing in the U.S., along with encouraging U.S. consumers to buy more American-made goods. Now, on Sunday, he once again touted that, saying U.S. auto manufacturers were going to make money in the likes of which they've never seen before. Wednesday has been tagged Liberation Day by the Trump administration, and from now until then, it's a critical 24 hours for the world economy. Trump is preparing to unveil a massive slate of import taxes tomorrow, which he says could hit all countries, not just those that have the biggest goods trade imbalances with the United States. And we don't know yet what sort of tariffs will be announced, but we know it will be on top of tariffs already imposed by the White House on aluminum, steel, and vehicles. The UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer and his team seem to have conceded a defeat of some sorts now, acknowledging that it now appears vanishingly unlike that a broader US-UK deal focused on technology cooperation, but dismantling tariffs in the process will be secured in time. The Prime Minister has told his cabinet the UK must be cool and calm in response to whatever taxes are unleashed by the US. In other words, the UK is not likely to reach for retaliatory tariffs immediately, and that will be partly in the hope of concluding the deal with the US as fast as possible after Wednesday. There is significant anxiety at the top of government about the impact tariffs could have, even if enforced for a short period of time, and even if the UK receives specific exemptions or mitigations, a massive global trade war would be damaging for the economy in any case. Meanwhile, the head of the European Commission, Ursula von der Leyen, is warning that it is ready to retaliate against the US if Donald Trump imposes those tariffs on European products. Trump is expected to announce those wide range of new tariffs tomorrow, with cars, pharmaceutical products among the sectors that could be hit. The EU's Ursula von der Leyen said the bloc is still open to negotiations, but it will hit back if the Trump administration went ahead with its plans. She told the European Parliament in Strasbourg, "Our objective is a negotiated solution, but of course, if need be, we will protect our interests, our people and our companies," adding, "Europe has not started this confrontation. We do not necessarily want to retaliate, but if necessary, we have a strong plan to retaliate and we will use it." Joining us now is lecturer in political ecology and decolonization at the School of Humanities of St. John University, Tokunbo Oloridami. Thank you for joining us on the program, Tokunbo.
Thank you, Amarachi, for having me.
The U.S. President Donald Trump is finalizing those tariff plans to announce them, I suspect, by midnight today. Some of that will hit the UK. What are your thoughts on this?
It's not so much of the way it hits us, but balancing the books back home here. It certainly will affect the way we do business here and this government in the UK. Because if you recall, the spring statement just came out a few days ago, and some of the projections are meant to change. Once that tax hits or the tariff hits, you will find that the Labour government will find what they're trying to save will not be adequate, and they'll be calling for more. So my feeling is not particularly about Trump. It is about the reactionary forces here within the UK economy and what that will mean for the ordinary people, what that will mean for our taxes, our pockets, and how we shop and how we make money in the UK. That is my most nascent concern as per the recent tariff that is coming, and everybody's expecting it with some panic, but hopeful that it shouldn't hit too badly.
Yes, some panic. People are expecting it, especially those manufacturing firms. But Prime Minister Keir Starmer has told the cabinet the UK must be cool and calm in response to whatever those taxes are, whatever the tariffs are that are unleashed by the US. How is this a strategy?
It's a strategy because I think it will serve two purposes. One, it leaves the door open for Keir Starmer to now go in and get a deal. I know for a fact that what the UK will prefer in their relations, trade relations with the United States, is to have a kind of protective deal, because the UK is out of Europe. They will now be able to negotiate for the UK island and say, look, let's have a deal. These are the waivers. These are what you get. These are what we lose. These are what we get. This is what you lose. So keeping quiet, keeping calm, kind of stem down the storm of backlash, back and forth, the movies that we're watching now happening between Canada and the United States, their closest neighbor. Taking a posture of passiveness appears to be a better one politically for the United Kingdom, because it allows them to now go back in there and negotiate for something better or negotiate for something less, more strenuous for the current economy. That, I think, is the kind of strategy that Keir Starmer wants to apply. And having all the MPs jumping in and insulting and shouting, that won't do anybody any good. The back end of that are people who will receive the blows, the real blows in their pocket out of those kind of strenuous conditions that will now be transferred to the people. Because if you increase the tariff, the producers will just increase the cost and transfer it to the end users.
But either way, people are going to feel the impact of this tariffs before the Prime Minister decides on what sort of response the UK should have to the US. But the response he has now is akin to an ostrich burying its head in the sand and hoping that this problem blows over. Wouldn't it be more damaging to the UK economy to go ahead with no response because there is a deal at the back that he's working with the US? He doesn't want, to jeopardize that deal, which is the reason why he doesn't want to respond to this. Wouldn't he be looking like a weak leader in front of many people in the UK?
No, I don't think so. And my thinking is informed by the current posture of the Conservative Party, which is also the next bigger party here in the UK. Kemi Badenoch has also made it clear. In fact, she's been accused of gagging Conservative MPs and asking them not to criticize Donald Trump. She's denied this, but has also spoken very openly about the fact that she would prefer to preserve the relations with the UK's closest or biggest political and security ally. And I think that kind of posture is informed, is strategic. That's the same thing I think Keir Starmer is doing, knowing that there's a security agreement at stake. The current, negotiations with Ukraine and contributions to NATO. There are other places to pick up, this argument if the UK were to take a stronger stance and posture themselves as a country that has an ego to protect and they want to now go against Trump. That is his game. He will outplay anybody in that kind of game, not minding what the consequences will be. So it's better for the United Kingdom to tread on the path of caution, knowing that there are greater stakes, and approaching this strategically will have them gain more because there are security negotiations going on that UK is also involved in. They need America to secure some ends in that bid, and they need a trade deal. They desperately need a trade deal. The truth is, for the UK to be able to come out of this storm with a robust economic profile and projections, they need a deal. They need a deal with the US, and I think they will get one because Donald Trump seemed to have a soft spot for Keir Starmer.
That's interesting, but it is a far cry from what the EU has planned. Commission President Ursula von der Leyen has said the EU is ready to retaliate, any of those tariffs that Trump announces. Is Keir Starmer's response probably informed by the fact that Britain is no longer part of the EU, and for many of these countries still within the Union, they wouldn't be facing these tariffs alone. There is some sort of buffer being part of a continental group against these tariffs from the United States.
Yes. Now you're hitting on some of the other issues. The United Kingdom is a bit exposed trade-wise because the former trade links with the European bloc is no longer there. And so they need new friends. And in making those friends, America is one of those is one of the biggest markets they need to secure. If they lose that with the ongoing Brexit, that's too much exposure. However, you have rightfully identified the fact that the European bloc is responding with some strength And this is because Donald Duke has lambasted Europe, especially the trade agreement and what works or does not work with the way they relate with America. He feels very bitter about the fact that the European bloc has not treated America well, and they are looking to get a pound of flesh back. But within that mix of his narrative, he has singled out the UK in a way. And that's why I still feel that the UK can get a deal for themselves, by themselves, not because we're not geographically part of the European plate, no, but because we're out of that trade arrangement that calls all of us Europeans, okay? That way, the UK, although geographically located in Europe, can still link and do business outside of the backlash and back and forth that will be going on between the European bloc and Donald Trump.
Beyond the facade of these tariffs and, what they represent for the United States, you ever wondered why Donald Trump is doing this?
One, I think he enjoys what he's doing, but then I will not join the general perception about Donald Trump. Rather, I will want to bring something else to this conversation, and that's America's debt profile. The United States currently is not particularly having it easy. They're not particularly very vibrant and viable economy as they used to be. I think they've got over $7 trillion debt to clear out, and that weight is not a light one. These tariffs could help Donald Trump clear out a major chunk of that debt, and he can start, giving tax relief to his big friends who have the real money to bring their manufacturing back to the US. And that way, he can then open new grounds for employment and perhaps kickstart the economy in a way that people would never expect. That is just one strategy out of many that I think could come out of this particular tariff imposition at will. But then one thing that remains within all of what Donald Trump is saying is he wants America to be better. And I want to see that that's what he's aiming at.
Well, the whole world is waiting to see what he's aiming at. Thank you so much, Tokumba. I really appreciate your analysis on the topic today.
Thank you for having me.
We're off on a short break now on The World Today. Still ahead. Heavy security presence in Zimbabwe as the government tries to mull a national protest. Stay with us. Welcome back to The World Today. Polish Minister of National Defense Władysław Koźniak-Kamysz in Warsaw on Tuesday reiterated the matter of supporting Ukraine in order to strengthen international security. He added that the NATO military spending increase will benefit everyone, thus building a strong NATO and a strong European Union. In its turn, Polish Prime Minister Donald Tusk stated that Warsaw holds the record for military expenditure relative to its financial capacity. Poland will allocate 4.7% of its GDP to defense this year, the highest proportion in NATO by a significant margin. Tusk stressed that Poland's defense spending is focused on creating the largest army in Europe in collaboration with the United States. Now, in turn, the United States Chargé d'Affaires, Interim Daniel Lawton, discussed the shared commitments to strengthen regional security through state-of-the-art military systems. Russian President Vladimir Putin has called up 160,000 men aged 18 to 30. That's Russia's highest number of conscripts since 2011, as the country moves to expand its size of its military. A spring call-up for a year's military service came several months after Putin said Russia should increase the overall size of its military to almost 2.39 million and its number of active servicemen to 1.5 million. That is a rise of 180,000 1,000 over the coming 3 years. Vice Admiral Vladimir Timosliansky said the new conscripts would not be sent to fight in Ukraine for what Russia calls its special military operation. However, there have been reports of conscripts being killed and fighting in Russia's border regions, and they were sent to fight in Ukraine in the early months of the full-scale war. A current draft, which takes place between April and July, comes despite U.S. attempts to forge a ceasefire in the war. It's only been 5 months since voters in Wisconsin faced a bitterly fought election, but residents of the U.S. state are already heading back to the polls. This time, Elon Musk looms large in the race to fill a vacancy on the Wisconsin Supreme Court, even if the bill in its name it does not appear on the ballot. It's the most expensive judicial contest in U.S. history, with more than $90 million spent so far, including $20 million from Musk himself and those groups affiliated with him. A choice is between conservative Brad Schimmel, backed by President Donald Trump and Musk, and liberal Susan Crawford, who is supported by former President Barack Obama and Democratic mega donors like George Soros. It's forecast to be a tight contest that could flip control of the Midwestern state's top court, which is currently controlled by 43 liberal justices. But it's also one of the first real tests of voter sentiment towards Trump in a state that he won by less than a percentage point during his decisive White House election victory last November. Well, staying in the U.S., 17 Tesla vehicles have been destroyed in a fire that spread at a car dealership in the eastern suburbs of Rome on Monday. And what was left was the charred vehicles in a parking lot and personnel of the franchise covering the damaged cars with canvas. A fire broke out at around 4:30 p.m. local time. Aside from the burned vehicles, no other damage was reported following the blaze. And local police are investigating the case, raising the possibility of arson as the cause of the fire. Tesla owner Elon Musk commented on his social media account, describing the incident as terrorism. A series of Tesla vandalism in showrooms worldwide have been reported, with Musk accused of expressing support for far-right ideologies. Protests against Musk also surged on Saturday in hundreds of cities across the U.S. In total, there were more than 200 such protests, with demonstrators urging people not to buy Tesla products and to dump Tesla stock. Or in Europe, Brussels airport was left deserted after public and private sector workers held a 24-hour nationwide strike on Monday, protesting against budget cuts. The video we're looking at shows the empty airport, with gates and check-in counters closed, as well as a tableau showing the cancelled flights. Several airport workers and passengers can be seen waiting at the airport. The South Charleroi airport reportedly suspended both incoming and outgoing traffic, while Brussels airport cancelled all 244 departure flights scheduled for Monday. Brussels Airlines reported the cancellation of approximately 200 of its flights. The Brussels Intercommunal Transport Company also announced disruption to services, with only 1 metro and 4 tram lines working on several buses operating extended routes. A strike was called by the General Labour Federation of Belgium and Confederation of Christian Trade Unions to demand higher pensions, sustainable career prospects, increased purchasing power, and quality public services. Well, to another protest, but here in Africa, heavy security presence seen in several parts of Zimbabwe, largely neutralizing a national protest that was scheduled for Monday, aimed at pressuring President Emmerson Mnangagwa to resign. Many businesses, offices and schools in the capital, Harare, and Bulawayo shut down, with people choosing to stay home amid fears of unrest. Independence War veterans have called for the demonstration to protest against plans to extend Mnangagwa's rule. Now in January, his ruling ZANU-PF party said it wanted him to stay in office another 2 years until 2030. Mnangagwa came to power in 2017 after his mentor and long-term president Robert Mugabe was ousted in a coup. He's currently serving his second and final term as president. Veterans led by Blessed Giza previously supported Mnangagwa but have turned against him, accusing him of corruption and wanting to cling to power. They want retired General and Vice President Constantine Chiwenga to take over as president. Chiwenga has not commented publicly about the calls for him to resign for him to replace Mnangagwa, and government officials deny there is a rift between the two men. Let's talk about it. Joining us now is the Director for Just and Inclusive Democratic Futures in Africa, Open Society Foundations in Nairobi, Chukwuemeka Eze. Thank you for joining us on the program today.
Thank you very much for having me.
And we're talking about Zimbabwe. So let me just get your thoughts on what you think the political situation is in Zimbabwe right now.
Well, I don't think it's far from what is happening in most of the African countries where the citizens are beginning to challenge the dividends of democracy being provided to them. And I think that for Zimbabwe, if you look at Zimbabwe historically, they have been under the kind of rule that, if you like, you can describe to as sit-tight presidents. But what also has happened is that those who have gone into opposition that merged post the Mugabe era are now finding it difficult to adapt to the new realities of leadership. And that is why I think it is very important that beyond just the street protests or beyond going into opposition and activism, people should also learn the ropes of leadership.
And learning the ropes of leadership would be hard because Zimbabwe, as we know, it has had only one president. And I think for many of the youths in the country, in their lifetime, they've only seen one president. That's Robert Mugabe in power in Zimbabwe. So now the protests are going on in the country, or the stifled protests, beg your pardon, are going on in the country. Why do they tend to go awry, especially in Africa? We see examples not just in Zimbabwe, but in Kenya, even here in Nigeria.
The truth of the matter is that Africa is entering a new era, moving beyond the old colonial identity politics-based system of representation, which enabled the deep states to thrive and also stifle leadership transitions. So you see lack of social cohesion and inclusivity, which has been used both by the colonial masters and the post-colonial governments to manipulate and divide the citizenry while enabling a few elites to accumulate and monopolize wealth and power. But what is also happening is that the state is also not alive to the fact that this is a shift in paradigm. So today's movements are polycentric in nature. It transcends party affiliations, ethno-religious formations, class, and professions. So it's no longer the time, for example, in Nigeria, where we say labor is protesting. So they are fueled now by digital connectivity, intersectionality, grassroots mobilization, collective networks, and innovative approaches, which they are even using to beat the state and the state intelligence system, which now enables them to harness, to shift power and shape the course of, if you like, intergenerational leadership and governance transitions in Africa. So the states, whether it is Kenya, whether it is South Africa, where they have made a resounding decision on the African National Congress, whether it is in Ghana, whether it is in Senegal, where the citizens themselves took their destiny into their hand to change the tide of leadership, ensuring that President Macky Sall does not go for a third term. So this is what is happening.
Right. And the main problem here is that some supporters of Mnangagwa in government want him to stay until 2030. That's a pretty long time, for him. And it also begs the question, what really is democracy in Africa?
Well, I think that Africa is witnessing the emergence of a new political dimension, which is championed by a new generation of leadership. New political cultures are being built, and new forms of people power, people-centric leadership and policies is being asked for from the states It's no longer enough for the state to continue to think that they can always determine what democracy should deliver to the people. In the last decade, new intersectional and intergenerational and detribalized coalitions have been formed, whether you look at the movement in Senegal, Nigeria, Ghana, Kenya, South Africa, and the Sahel, Occupy parliaments, all these things are beginning to ask some critical questions as it relates to the socio-economic issues rather than just stolen election and human rights violations. So for democracy in Africa to thrive, I think that the states need to understand that with a median age of 18 and a projected population of 2.5 billion by 2050, Africa's youth population presents an opportunity for democratic renewal and generational transition in public leadership.
So you have the generational gap. You have many African countries made up mainly, the larger parts of the population mainly made up of young people. But then you still have the older generations in power. They're the ones trying to rule these ones. I see chaos here, and I think that's why, there have been many protests in many of these countries, as you say, a generational shift, a shift in democracy. Where's the meeting point for both generations?
I think this is the time to sit down and renegotiate the social contract. It can no longer be business as usual. While we are not discarding the old leaders, there is also something for the younger generation to offer. And if you look at the kind of organizing that we are having now, the kind of social movement we are having now, which is distinct from what we used to have in the past, which now, for the first time, is cutting. If you look at what happened in Nigeria, it cuts across rural, peri-urban, and urban centers, fostering new identities, new forms of political mobilization, and the redefinition of what they understand to be democratic dividends. Africa, in my opinion, can build more inclusive, more accountable, and, if you like, more responsive governance systems that empower youth, women, and the diverse community to drive equitable development and democratic progress. And that is why, if you look at the most recent democracy index in Africa, only a very few countries that you can pinpoint that are practicing true democracy. Maybe because of their number, maybe because of the political cultures that they've developed. But if you look at even the first 10 African countries that you can say are practicing what looks like democracy, they are just there. It's not pure democracy. But I must also admit that even democracy globally is facing serious challenges, including in the almighty America and the UK. They are all facing this kind of challenges that is now prompting people to ask, how can we redefine the ethos of democracy and begin to reimagine the new face of democracy, which indeed speaks to a people-centric politics and a people-oriented policies.
I don't mean to put you on the spot here, but it would be nice if you actually highlighted the countries in Africa that you say are practicing true democracy.
Well, you can pinpoint countries like Mauritius, like Botswana. In West Africa, you have Cabo Verde and Ghana to a large extent. And because also of the people's oriented politics in Senegal, where they have twice demonstrated that they have the ability to determine what kind of democracy they want, you can put Senegal there. South Africa, to the extent that even the ANC has been challenged, and yet the country continues to be cohesive in nature. But in terms of the delivery of that democracy beyond the electoral processes, we still have issues in Africa.
Yeah. What I notice about these countries that you have mentioned is how small their populations are. So can we say that it is much easier practicing democracy in smaller countries with smaller populations than with countries that have larger populations like Nigeria and possibly neighboring Ghana?
Well, to the extent that we don't have the kind of systems that developed countries have, I will agree. But there are other bigger countries, more populated countries that continue to practice what seems to be good democracy. If you look at even the history of democracy, the origin of democracy from Athens, it was a time that people could gather together to make those kind of choices. But as population continues to grow, the question done to ask is, how are we employing technology, for example? How are we putting in place sustainable systems that can address the challenges of those populations without necessarily allow the political class to either maneuver those kind of systems even when they are put in place, but allowing the true reflection and the responsive governance as determined by the citizens themselves to thrive beyond what the political class that constitute in many instances less than 1% of the population desire and determine to be the future of democracy and what democracy can deliver for the citizens.
I know that people listening to this conversation are thinking, oh, that it really sounds good. You know, you saying it on TV. It sounds also fantastic when you have to read it, on paper. But in practice, there are some countries where the youth have no chance at all. I mean, you just know that they're wasting their time. We know that when people go to the polls to vote, yeah, just very few votes are counted. There's a lot of violence. There's a lot of disenfranchisement going on at the polls. Apart from just talking about it, apart from just, condemning these actions, what else can people do to secure this democracy that is still nascent in Africa?
Well, there has been a time in history that power is willingly transferred to those who seek power. So for me to establish whatever looks like an inclusive, socially cohesive, and right-based African democracies, which is rooted in our slogan of Ubuntu, I think we must begin to invest in the reimagination of politics and governance by strengthening these social movements that we are seeing now. I think they remain now the alternative voice. They have become the alternative voice that we can rely on. The state itself is captured. The executive in most of the countries in Africa have captured both the parliament and the judiciary. So the only voice we hear today is these social actors, these social movements, artists, traditional civil society organizing are in many ways, but particularly questioning the political economy. They are asking that money should not determine the outcomes of election. So if we begin to strengthen the power of citizens to organize and mobilize beyond these historical identity cleavages based on their shared socio-economic values, then we'll be making progress. And that's what Open Society Foundation, for example, where I'm leading the reimagination of democracy in Africa. That's exactly what we want to focus on in the next 8 years.
Yeah, and we wish you all of the best, though. We know that this conversation does not end. We'll keep having it, and we'll keep keeping our leaders conscious and accountable. Thank you again, Chukwuemeka Eze, for joining us on the program.
Thank you so much for having me.
In other parts of the world now, gang members have stormed the town of Mirabale in central Haiti and released about 500 inmates from prison. A spokesperson for Haiti's national police said extra officers had been deployed to the town, which is located 50 kilometers northeast of the capital, Port-au-Prince. Police officers said they had regained control of Mirabale, but local reports warn that many of the escaped inmates are still roaming the streets. Armed gangs are in control of almost the entire capital, but the latest attack seems to suggest that they are increasingly targeting towns in other areas of the country. Redefining is located on the crossroads of two main roads, one leading north from Port-au-Prince to the coast and another leading east to the Dominican Republic. Locals say heavily armed men have fired at buildings and passers-by and set buildings and cars alight, sending residents fleeing for their lives. Torres Sand residents have been evacuated as a volcano erupted in southwest Iceland, threatening a town and popular attraction. The volcano has been spewing lava and smoke in fiery display of orange and red since the eruption began in the morning, creating a huge crack in the ground, which has grown to 1.2 kilometers long. Multiple earthquakes have occurred in the volcanic area throughout the day. The volcano is close to the fishing town of Grindavik and the famous Blue Lagoon Spa. A small number of people refused to evacuate the town, according to local media. People were asked to leave the danger zone, according to the police commissioner. Iceland's broadcaster said that individuals staying in 7 or 8 houses there have decided to remain in the town. There are fears the town is in danger of having lava flows entering the inhabited area, according to authorities. We're up for another break now. Still ahead on The World Today. Aren't they adorable? It's the Kiwi fashion in Ecuador, where guinea pigs strut their stuff down the runway, I guess. Stay with us. Welcome back to The World Today. Kisumu Young Entrepreneurs, a group of innovative farmers from Western Kenya, has revolutionized the farming sector by turning to black soldier fly production to create fertilizers and natural feed for livestock in the region. Employees at the BSF farm are seen dealing with the BSF larvae, from sorting them out in their hatching nets to filtering them to the feeding materials and collecting frass. Livestock and poultry owners were also seen feeding animals on BSF larvae. The utilization of BSF in the farming industry, according to the KIA members, can not only become a food source for animals and fertilizer, but also enrich the soil and help combat climate change. Farm owners acknowledge the use of the larvae as food for animals helps the livestock to grow healthier and faster, which in the long term provides higher incomes and employment sustainability for the farmers.
We have the gradual change in temperature. Most farmers can't predict how or when will it rain. So with the black soldier fly, it helps the farmer or the world as a whole to fight the climate change. Two, we have what we call the frass. It helps the farmers to produce organic fertilizers, which they are going to use in the farm. If you feed the soil, you will improve the soil structure. That's number one. The second, you will increase the microbial activities in the soil. The third one, you will improve on the soil water holding capacity. So these are the several aspects of the soil fertility that the black soldier fly or organic fertilizer or the frass help us in maybe regenerating our soils within the country. It's very high in protein, which is a very good supplement for the feeds, for fish, for chicken, and also maybe for pigs. So that is why we opt for the remains of the black soldier fly.
Meanwhile, a rural school in Malawi's Chikwawa has turned to biogas to provide free meals, cut dependence on traditional firewood, and even boost attendance. Workers collect cow dung used for biogas production, drawing water for further processing and mixing waste into a biodigester to produce fuel that volunteer cooks use in preparing meals for students at the school. Head teacher Winstead Moto says the use of biogas has significantly reduced cooking time, enabling volunteer school cooks to start their shifts earlier. The community also benefits from organic fertilizer, a byproduct of the biogas process.
It started 9 months ago. After that, we see it with that it was very good and it is very effective. Because, for example, as we were using the firewood, it was late. And some of the cooks were coming something past 1, that is 1 a.m. But due to the introduction of this biogas, they are now coming something past 4.
Don't they just look adorable? I wonder if they even know what they're wearing. We're looking at the Kiwi fashion of guinea pigs strutting their stuff, well, soon enough, down the runway, and a variety of costumes in Ecuador's Chaltura. A number of the fellow rodents then found themselves, sadly, on the menu of this celebration of all of this guinea pig? Well, the rodents are seen wearing eccentric costumes earlier, including astronauts. They're dressed as royalty, chefs, and some donning hand-embroidered traditional costumes as they contest in a competition to attract which is the most attractive guinea pig, I guess. Event organizer Juan Maffa says a guinea pig is an important animal in the local culture of Chaltura, a small town located 110 kilometers north of Quito. The guinea pig is also considered part of the ancestral cuisine of this region. After the beauty contest, the human visitors then tuck into a traditional roasted guinea pig, as well as other local dishes based on the animal. The rodent has been a part of the Ecuadorian diet since pre-Columbian times, but in recent years it's also started to be seen as a companion animal and a symbol of identity for many communities. I'm sure they never expected that ending. Now, every spring in the region of Imathia in northern Greece, the place is transformed by a magical covering of bright pink, oh there it is, and green hues. That's all thanks to the blossoming of the region's famous peach trees that thrive on the plains around Veria at the eastern foothills of the Vermio Mountains, one of the largest mountain ranges in Greece. In addition to peaches, you have apples, cherries, and other fruits growing here. But the peaches, yeah, they're the ones that really give the area those magical colors in spring. And in the month of March, the area is blessed with an endless pink carpet of blossoming peach trees, which attracts local and foreign tourists. Locals then hold a 2-week festival at the time, allowing visitors to fully enjoy the blossom. Typically, the best time to admire the blossoming peach trees is late March and into early April. Hundreds of people gathered in Trafalgar Square in London on Saturday for what was the celebration of Eid al-Fitr, marking the end of the holy month of Ramadan and what is believed to be the largest open-air event of its kind in Europe. The Ramadan Tent Project staff give participants food for their final meal after fasting, and then they listen to a prayer and then unite in worship. The charity that hosts the event has been running this since 2013, expanding to 12 cities across the country with annual events.
Open Iftar at Trafalgar Square is the largest Open Iftar of 2025. We're absolutely thrilled and delighted to be here in the heart of London, in one of the world's most iconic squares, Trafalgar Square. And tonight we're going to be welcoming over 2,000 people from all walks of life, different faith backgrounds, non-faith backgrounds. Everyone is welcome. And the reason for that is because tonight we're celebrating the last day of Ramadan. Our mission at Ramadan Tent Project as a charity is to bring communities together to better understand each other. And so through our flagship event, which is Open Iftar, part of the Ramadan Festival, which we organize every year, is really to invite people to come together to understand what is the reason why we're fasting during this month. There's no better way over food to turn strangers into friends, to actually create spaces of dialogue, of understanding, to raise awareness really, and to bridge between those who are fasting and observing Ramadan with other faith backgrounds as well. I would just basically like to say, for those who have been with us throughout the whole month of Ramadan, we say amazing thank you to you for being guests, for supporters, followers of our work. And of course, we'd love to wish you a happy Eid as well to all of the viewers who are celebrating. And also we look forward to seeing you in our Ramadan Festival 2026.
I'm here because it's such a privilege to participate in Iftar with my Muslim brothers and sisters, even though I'm not a Muslim, but it's a beautiful kind of celebration, and to be invited in is something really special. And yeah, especially in a place like Trafalgar Square, which is so important to British culture. And yeah, I'm just super happy to be here and to eat the food and to be in community. The thing from the Open Iftar Ramadan Tent Project is to feel connected with others, to share in a moment of reflection and community, and to eat some really good food. I was supposed to come 2 weeks ago, but I got sick, so I'm really, really, really excited to be here. I've been waiting weeks and weeks, and I couldn't be happier.
We're bringing it home now. Muslim faithful in Katsina State, the northwest of Nigeria, have commemorated this year's Eid Salah festival with colorful cultural display poised to open more doors for future partnerships and investment opportunities. The aim was to mark the end of the sacred month of Ramadan, a period dedicated to fasting, prayer, reflection, and service to humanity. This year's celebration attracted the European Union ambassador to Nigeria, Mr. Gautier Mignon, alongside 9 other ambassadors and their wives, which could be termed as a historic milestone.
The stage is set for the Katsina State Traditional Durbar Cultural Festival, popularly called Hawan Bariki. The event, which is celebrated twice in the year, attracts thousands of people from within and outside the state and the country at large. This year's celebration hosts several foreign diplomats and their spouses, with hopes of exploring possible investments and partnerships along the lines of the state's rich cultural heritage.
This has traditionally been a very good tradition, and our government is trying all it could to ensure that we have maintained that standard and we are able to promote it so that that will give happiness to our people.
The essence of the Durbar, which kicks off from the Katsina Emir's house and terminates at the Katsina Old Government House, is to pay Salah homage to the governor. Besides the richly attired Emir, hunters and traditional security guards and musicians show off their skills. Historians trace the beginning of the long tradition to more than 11 decades ago, during the reign of the Emir of Katsina, King Muhammadu Diko.
I know the Durbar celebration is part of the culture of the Hausa land, and it's part of one of the things that we do. You know, we go to the mosque, that's on Salah Day, and then the day after we come to the government house for this visit. Yes. So it's very, very significant. It marks a part of our culture, a part of our history, a part of what we are.
And for the indigents, the celebration is a dual-purpose occasion aimed at not only promoting peace and unity among the people, but also to boosting the economy.
You see, these festivities traditionally are meant to boost our economy, infuse cultural diversity and what have you. Go to Brazil, go to countries, Canada, and even the US now is trying to imbibe it. They do this in order to show people the cultural heritage. And when tourists come, even the person selling pure water will make money. It will boost our economy.
Foreign dignitaries in attendance share their impressions about the traditional Durbar festival and the rich cultural heritage of Katsina State.
Very, very impressive, beautiful. It's nice to see a different culture that I have seen before.
This is my 6th time in Katsina, my 2nd time during Durbar, and I'm very happy that many of my colleagues joined me here in Katsina to witness the Durbar, the rich cultural heritage of Katsina, to see the prosperity that the governor has brought to Katsina, and to enjoy this generosity and the unique hospitality of the Katsina State.
Residents are therefore encouraged to continue to embody the virtues of patience, compassion, and self-discipline cultivated during the holy month of Ramadan.
Well, that's the world today. Thanks for watching. I'm Amarachi Ubani.